because we're overwhelmed with change. We're overwhelmed with challenges in our organization. If what we're doing is good enough, yes, I understand this is better. I understand this would improve things. But right now, we're drowning in change and things to do.
Without supplies, there's no surgery. Without products, there's no patient care. Welcome to Power Supply, the healthcare supply chain podcast focused on helping you navigate the intricacies of logistics, purchasing, contracting, and supplier relationships. Each episode, we speak with healthcare executives, supply chain leaders, and innovative entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the loading dock to strategic sourcing, from buyers to the C-suite, and across the enterprise, we tackle the real-life issues impacting the healthcare supply chain. Whether you're tuning in for conversation or inspiration, we're glad you're here. You're just in time to hear it from the source and stock up on insight. So sit back and plug into Power Supply.
On this episode of Power Supply, we are going to speak once again with Martyn Lewis, founder and principal at Market Partners. Martyn reached out to me, Hayes, because we recently re-released his first appearance on the show, and he had a number of people reaching out to him. And I got to say, I think it's got a lot to do with just the healthcare environment has changed so much. And organizations are absolutely stressed. And if you talk to any of supplier organization, they'll tell you like, oh, the sales cycle in healthcare is so slow. I'm having such a hard time. I've got a great product. It's a no-brainer. It should be a done deal. And yet they don't happen. And so Martyn's going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about why this concept or this approach of assertive persuasion really just doesn't work anymore. And many people continue to use it. And honestly, I think a lot of the folks on the healthcare side are probably having a little bit of fatigue from that and starting to wash out from just an overload of information and data with people trying to help them solve problems that are very real for them every day today.
A lot of problems, but if you stay tuned now, you're going to learn a lot about the true competition inside of a health system. You're going to talk about some of the obstacles you've got to overcome and the status quo. So listen up, and you're going to enjoy today.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Martyn.
I'm Hayes Walder.
This is Gary Skinner.
And I'm Justin Poulin.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to Power Supply.
Today on Power Supply, Martyn Lewis making his second appearance on the show. Martyn, you got a lot of great feedback from your prior interview with us, and it's kind of taking a little bit of a different approach to maybe how we've created a lot of content on these shows in the past. You're the founder and principal at Market Partners. And so I think a lot of the content that we're going to be talking about today is directed more to the supplier partners that are also listening to Power Supply. But, obviously I think that the content from today is something that, all of those listeners that work in the healthcare supply chain can actually share with their supplier partners because it is changing out there. The title of today's episode is Why Assertive Persuasion Doesn't Work Anymore. It's a tried and true sales strategy, and yet we're in a very different healthcare environment. And quite frankly, to not waste the supply chain professionals' time, we need to help the suppliers get better at getting their message across because we all need to find ways to work more collaboratively and efficiently together. So Martyn, welcome back to the show.
Terrific, Justin. It's good to be here.
Hey, will you first define assertive persuasion for me? For this guy from Nashville, what does that exactly mean?
Well, hey, it's kind of interesting. It's one of the 4 influencing styles. And we all have a natural influencing style. But what does that mean? That means what are we trying? We're trying to get somebody to do something we'd like them to do. In this case, we'd like them to commit to and buy our products or services. So assertive persuasion is using assertion to persuade people to do that, using logic, facts, and figures. If somebody doesn't see things the same way as I do, I then need to assert and give them more data, more reasons, more logic, because if they saw it the way I see it, surely they would agree with me. So in the selling sense, if I want you to buy my product, I will tell you what's great about my product. I'm going to tell you all about the clinical trials, all about how it's going to save you money, how it's going to influence patient outcomes. I'm going to give you more and more data, because if you saw it the way I see it, only a fool wouldn't buy.
Interesting.
I understand.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm persuaded.
It's logic. It just makes sense. Gosh, if you understood it like I understand it, you would agree with me.
Except everybody's got a logical point, right? And everybody is building their companies around the logic
it truly makes
behind
sense
the design of their product or solution, right?
It makes sense until you broaden the lens and look at somebody in their position and all that they're doing.
What are some of the other influence styles for influencing, right? So this is one. What are some examples of a few others? I also want, maybe if there are supplier partners that are listening, to kind of think about what their style is and put this particular strategy into a context.
Well, the others kind of go each way of assertive persuasion. There's carrot and stick. If you don't do this, you're going to fail. If you do this...
Oh, that's my favorite management style.
It's interesting because we all have natural influencing styles. But of course, the situation calls you to actually adjust your influencing style. The other one is more collaborative, that we build the argument together. So on the one hand, you have kind of carrot and stick. You have assertive persuasion being the very logical one in the middle. And then you have collaboration being, let's build this together.
I would venture a guess that most people listening to this episode would prefer the collaborative, style. So why was assertive persuasion so popular then? If we're like, to me, it just seems so obvious that the collaborative style is the way to go. But yet you have these other styles, and predominantly in healthcare sales, the assertive persuasion seems to be the one that people lean on.
Well, let's go to when I'm talking to maybe the owners, CEOs, executive of those companies, the suppliers. And they say, gosh, why don't hospitals buy from us? We can save them money. Only a fool wouldn't buy. And I've heard that so many times. Only a fool wouldn't buy, because they so believe in what they do. And of course, especially if you're a founder or a CEO, you've got to believe with passion in what you do. So you believe, and in your heart of hearts, you see that you're offering your product, your service, whatever it is, that is going to save people's lives. It's going to impact patient outcomes positively. It's going to save money. So you believe in your heart of hearts that only a fool wouldn't buy if they just saw it this way. So that naturally pushes the whole organization towards that. Marketing, create material that proves how great the offering is. Marketing, create white papers that show all the benefits of it. So everything is pushing towards its assertive persuasion.
So, and the thing is that the data that they're collecting and the white papers that they're creating are actually entrenching them in that belief. And as you said, if you're going to lead an organization, you better believe in the value. So you go out and try to find ways to reinforce the truthfulness of your value prop, right?
Absolutely. And then get them. So if you see it this way, you will understand and you will buy this. And what really is happening, and this is so interesting because we do a lot of research. We talk to the buyers. We talk to the healthcare providers about what they're buying, how they're buying, why they're not buying, etc. The thing that is so intriguing to us is that they understand the value of the product. They're not buying, to use a double negative there, because they don't understand the value. They do understand the value and they believe it. And yet, when the company that's selling sees that they're not buying, they believe that, gosh, you can't understand. So you come in with more data, more logic, and yet the buyer knows, they understand, yes, I get it. So what happens, and Justin, you said it right at the start, that this is both sides of the equation, the partnership between the seller and the buyer. What happens is that the seller is wasting the buyer's time because they fully understand the value. They get what you're selling. They get what the benefits are. But yet we use assertive persuasion to continue to try and get them to buy.
But Martyn, I mean, wouldn't it be logical that we have if you're selling something, I need to kind of weigh and evaluate my customer and what's going to resonate with them, right? It could just be all personality, it could be persuasion, it could be a lot of different things, right? I mean, and so would you kind of talk on that a little bit? Because that would be helpful for me.
Yeah, totally. Well, what we see is this: when somebody's failing to buy, this is where the whole thing breaks down. When somebody fails to buy, if you're selling the product, you believe it's because you haven't presented the product in a good enough light. But as our research has shown, the buyer fully understands what you're selling. And then that's the breakdown. So the seller is continuing to try and convince you that this product is good for you. And the buyer is saying, yes, I get it, but there are other reasons why they aren't buying. That's the issue. One of my clients, actually, I loved the expression they used when we went through this with them, showed them the data, showed them what was happening when they were selling. They used that expression from Raiders of the Lost Ark. They said, so you mean we're digging in the wrong place? We're trying to polish our value proposition. We're trying to convince our prospects that this is a great product for them, but that's not what the problem is.
It could be a lot of other, particularly in healthcare, a lot of other reasons why. It could be a competitive product. It could be pricing. It could be a lot of things.
That's the gold, and it's actually rarely those two things.
So the company is just sitting there saying, we know our value prop is good. We can tell the customer believes in it, and the data is totally understandable to them, and yet we're not moving forward in the sales process, so we're totally confused. And it's because they have to not only dig in a different place, but they probably have to dig a little bit deeper in how they approach moving from assertive persuasion to collaboration, right? Because, why doesn't it work though, right? If the customer does believe all of that, and it's perfectly convincing. I get there could be other factors, like Hayes said, but why wouldn't that eventually work when the timing is right?
Well, that's exactly it. Let's talk about that, because that's where the gold is. And the good news here, it's actually very predictable why somebody isn't buying. You can decode that. You've got to really put yourself in their world. And this is a lot of the research we do. We talk to buyers and find out why they're not buying, what the hurdles are. And it's really interesting when you find what they are. And I was talking earlier about widening the lens and really understanding the customer's position. So some of the reasons they don't buy is, first of all, let's take a look at this. They are overwhelmed with products and services that will improve their lives. They're overwhelmed with people approaching them and saying, we have the clinical evidence. We can improve patient outcomes. We can save lives. We can save you money. They get those offers every day. They couldn't possibly say yes to everyone. Let's start with that. If they said yes to everyone, they'd be doing nothing but buying stuff and changing stuff throughout their organization. So they're overwhelmed with such offers. You're not the only voice in town knocking on the door with a good offer. Then there's the change. And this is the killer, the change. So we're going to perhaps change a particular product, protocol, service, or whatever. What does that mean to the organization? Do we have to change workflow? Does it mean that somebody in ICU is going to turn to a crash cart and the product that they've always had there for the last 20 years isn't there, something else is there, and the buttons are slightly different? That could be life and death. So change. What change will adopting your product or service cause inside the organization? Another one. What training is required? What training is required? Now, we worked with an organization that had a terrific device that went into pharmacies, and it demanded that people would be trained. Well, the person selling the device, they saw how great this particular device was, and the fact that everybody that used it had to have 1 or 2 hours worth of training, they thought that was insignificant. To the hospital, it was very significant. It was very significant to take all the folk that could possibly touch or be involved with that particular product and train them for 2 hours and ensure the training's up to date. So that was something that the supplier knew, but had really de-emphasized. To the buyer, it was a major issue. So change, status quo bias. Is what we're doing good enough, right? Because we're overwhelmed with change. We're overwhelmed with challenges in our organization. If what we're doing is good enough, yes, I understand this is better. I understand this would improve things.
Yeah, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. Yep.
We're drowning in change and things to do. Other things is you may be replacing something with something that's superior and cheaper. But what if they get that current product from somebody who also supplies them with a whole load of other things? A bundled contract. Wow. In comes the regional supplier saying, wow, too bad you're not going to buy that from us. And the 16% discount you enjoy on that $100 million of other equipment is going to go to 14%. So these are just some of the issues. The big thing is, though, it's predictable. You can actually predict what the issues are going to be. You can predict who's going to come out of the woodwork with what objection.
You know, Martyn, I love this. Is really, really good. I mean, it is, because you outline, I mean, kind of many of the challenges that are out there in the sales cycle, you know, for these companies. And honestly, it seems to me, because I have relationships on both sides of the provider and supplier, it seems to me in many cases, it's that status quo is truly the premier competitor. And because I had a CEO tell me one time, he goes, you know, particularly as it relates to IT, he goes, if, you know, we send things down and, hey, look at this new product, this new solution. And he goes, if the IT guy or gal says yes, it means more work for them. He goes, it just means more work for them. And then they have to make sure, to your point, in service is right. Everybody knows how to use it. It's very, very difficult. If someone has a chance to say no, to keep it as is, I think they will. It's got to be really compelling, in other words.
There's so many reasons for that. And of course, risk is one. And that's especially true in this industry. But that risk is something we've really got to take very seriously. So if we're going to change something, there's a risk to that. So yes, status quo bias, you said it, Hayes, it is the number one competitor people are fighting. And they fight it. Well, let's go back to our theme here with assertive persuasion. That if you really understood all how great this is and the positive impact it's going to have, you would buy. It's not because they don't believe. It's because what they're doing today is good enough and they've got many other fish to fry. There's so much else going on that it's just not worth the change and the risk. And they're used to saying no. If this was the only thing they're saying no to, that may be different, but they're used to saying no.
Let me ask you something about the value prop, right? Because we kind of made an assumption there at the beginning that, all right, the value prop is good, right? The data is good, all of that. But is the value prop really good in that scenario? I mean, if the value prop is still just kind of, you know, pointing towards the data and all of that, maybe they need to look at changing that. Like maybe that value prop is good, but it needs to be great in today's environment. Is that a true kind of statement?
True, but it's true, but it's only part of the story. So I don't want to go down in history as saying value propositions are not important. They are. They are, if I use the analogy, they're the door opener. You've got to have that value proposition. But that isn't going to close the deal. You've got to handle all of those issues. You're digging in the wrong place. And I just kind of look at all the organizations that just try and hone their value proposition. They're digging in the wrong place. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do we handle all of the issues? How do we work with a prospect? How do we work with a provider to ensure that all those issues are managed? In many ways, what we've got to make sure is that everything it's going to take for them to utilize our product or service successfully is in place. I talk about moving past the sale. For many people, it's when you get the order, great, that's victory, that's the finish line. Stop focusing on that. Start focusing longer term on everything it's going to take for that hospital to use your product or service successfully. Help them get there, because that's what they're worrying about.
It's really good because, like, to your point, it's cradle to the grave. It's just, you know, getting the sales guy or, you know, or gal wants just to get that order in, right? But the buyer, they want to see a successful implementation. They hear feedback from the floor going, it's awesome. And until then, it's not complete.
So, hey, this is where the gold is. Exactly what you're saying. That's what we've got to collaborate with our prospects on. So that's where the collaboration comes in. It comes in. It's not about how great the product is. It's how great it could be for you. What are all the things that you're going to have to do? So that's what you hear. So that's where the collaboration is. So move the spotlight away from how great the product is into helping them look at how they're going to use it successfully. How are they going to manage the change? How are they going to change workflow? How are they going to do training? How are they going to move from one supplier to the other? How are they going to introduce it to the organization? All of those things is where we need to collaborate and where we need to put the spotlight.
I'm almost kind of wondering how healthcare can kind of shape that process for the suppliers even, right? Because I'm almost thinking like it's a game of trust, right? Because the minute you introduce somebody to your organization and even start exploring, it can cause that disruption that may already be holding them back, right? So it becomes this brick wall because wait, if I'm going to let you even go talk to the clinicians and start, showing them this or that, and then we find like you don't have the answers to all the questions, then we got to put the brakes on that. And then I feel like I've caused a lot of, wasted time and effort for the clinicians. And at the same time, I don't want to keep good opportunities, outside of the organization. But I feel like you're kind of playing a game of chicken, or that you can be at a stalemate quite often. And I'm hearing what, healthcare, what the suppliers could do differently. But how does healthcare transform itself to sort of positively reinforce this collaborative approach instead of stop sending me the emails and the LinkedIn messages with your over assertive persuasion efforts?
Justin, this is such an important point, and I've seen it in action. So if you're on the buying side of the equation, if you're dealing with a supplier who is just wasting your time talking about how great their product is, then those are the ones that you can't collaborate with. But if you're working with somebody, and I have seen this, and I'm sure many of the people listening in have seen it, if you're working with a supplier who clearly has the method, the motivation, and the expertise to collaborate with you, that's when you open the door. That's when a true collaborative relationship can happen and magic happens. Because as a hospital, you are leveraging the experience of that company. That company isn't just dealing with you. They're selling to multiple hospitals. They see what the best practices are. They should understand where are all those hurdles. How have other organizations overcome those hurdles? So those organizations should be able to collaborate with you incredibly positively. And in my mind, you can spot that very quickly.
So Martyn, what I'm kind of hearing is, they want solutions to their problems, not solutions to the supplier's problems.
Yeah.
Boom. Yes. Of course they do. That's good.
That's a great way of expressing it, Justin. Suppliers often don't see they're bringing problems. They all think they're bringing a solution. Like I never come across a company today that doesn't think they're selling a solution, but a solution to what? And it's really fascinating when we go the other side of the curtain and we talk to the buyer, we talk to the hospital, and they say, yeah, but if we go with that, who's going to train our folk? How are we going to, what about the changes in insurance claims? What about all the things they're dealing with? So what the supplier is actually doing is, oddly enough, not bringing a solution. They're bringing problems. And unless they're collaborating with that institution, unless they're working with them in that kind of consultative fashion, those problems just sit there. And then we go back to status quo. So the real key, as we said just a few minutes ago, is that collaborative relationship where you work with the hospital to really help them look at not just how great your product is, but how they're going to make it great for them. How are they going to have the solution they really want? And as Hayes said, have that feedback that people think this is great. This was a great change.
Do you see a difference between products and services in this regard? Because, there are many companies out there that provide services, not products. Do they tend to be a little bit more on that collaborative side since they kind of have that service, purchase service is going to have an ongoing engagement, right? They're delivering something, that's not just getting shipped in and hitting the loading dock. And a lot of times there's personnel involved, et cetera. Do you see differences between the two?
Yes, but it's not as if they're in two different camps. So we still see people that are selling services pitching their services the same way with assertive persuasion, saying like, this service is better than what you're doing today. We can save you money. We can save lives. So therefore, sign up here. And we're not going through to say, how is this going to actually be used? I'll give you an example. We were involved with an organization, over 20 years ago at the start of reprocessing services. So hospitals were not really using reprocessing at that time. And we were working with one of the reprocessing services, and they were going into hospitals and saying, reprocessing is really simple. We'll take your single-use devices that we can, because we have FDA approval, we'll reprocess those, we'll send them back to you, and they're actually as good or better than brand new ones. Because interesting enough, if you reprocess a device, you have to test every device, where if it's a new device, you only have to batch test. So arguably, a reprocessed device is better than a brand new device. And of course, it saves huge amounts of money because you're not having to spend money on new equipment, and it reduces toxic waste. So there's all reasons to do reprocessing. And basically they were saying, so every time you reprocess with us, we're only going to charge you 60% the price of a new device. So this is a no-brainer. If we can't reprocess the device, we charge you nothing. So this truly is a no-brainer that you save 40% every time we reprocess for you. They've been new to the market, as I said, over 20 years ago. They went to hospitals, and hospitals would get excited, but then they wouldn't use their reprocessing service. And it was kind of a scratch your head. Well, why aren't people doing this? So we went behind the scenes to find out, so why aren't we doing this? First of all, we heard, well, this isn't the only way for us to save money. Right? There's other ways for us to save money. But then we started to hear, wait a minute, who's going to train the folk in the OR to take a device and put it in a different bin so it can be reprocessed? And how do we get that to you? And then what about insurance? What about if a physician or surgeon is using a reprocessed device, not a new device? What's the insurance risk? And then the one that I really loved is our IT systems. When we buy something, it goes in our bill of materials, it goes onto the shelf, and we'll pick it when we have a certain procedure. When that, as far as the bill of materials is concerned, that device is now used and gone. When it comes back, the IT system doesn't recognize it, so it will never get picked off the shelf. So these were some of the issues that we saw. These were the reasons they weren't buying. So we changed the whole strategy for that company from not just presenting and reprocessing services, but actually saying that we have the expertise. We know where all the issues are. We know if you're going to start a reprocessing program that you're going to have questions about insurance, about the workflow of how devices get from the OR to be reprocessed. You're going to have IT issues with your bill of materials. We know how to solve all of that. We can come in and we can do that in 4 to 6 weeks. So in 4 to 6 weeks' time, you can have a reprocessing program up and running in your hospital. So that was a great way of discovering what the issues were and then truly collaborating, taking the focus off the benefit of using reprocessing, putting the focus on, hey, we can help you get a reprocessing program. It's not simple, but we're the experts. So we can come in and we can handle all of that for you. Our IT folk can talk to your IT folk. We can handle all of that for you. So there's an example of true collaboration.
That's a perfect example. I mean, it really is. And you kind of laid it out so well. And once I heard it, it was like, okay, that's a no-brainer. But, but Martyn, I mean, what I hear so frequently, and I think if I'm a supplier, they go to a health system, they present, they do their dog and pony, right? And they get I'll check back with me and it's a no or whatever. But I think what that means so many times is they're just not ready. It's not really a no to the product, no to the service, or no to the rep, really. It's just like, I've got 50 other projects on hand right now. Let's do this, Q2 or whatever, right? I mean, I think that's the problem so many people see. It's just, they're inundated. They got so much stuff.
Yeah. How do you elevate the priority list? I think is a common complaint because there was something that Martyn said. He's like, hey, they were really excited and then they didn't buy. And I think there are a lot of people out there that have had that experience as sales professionals. They finally get the audience. They get in there. They do the presentation. They walk out of the room feeling like I absolutely killed it today, and they'll say stupid things. Yeah. They'll say stupid things. Like it's a done deal. And then they walk out the door and they can't get their attention again because of all the other things Martyn's describing, like start to creep into the equation as the health system is doing their due diligence. And it's a great point. How do you climb the priority list or even stay relevant? Because I think this is why people lean, and I want your thoughts on this. I think this is why people lean back to assertive persuasion, Martyn. I don't think they know how to stay on the radar with those extended timelines, to Hayes's point about it's not the right time yet. And so their only vehicle for staying on the radar is to keep sending over data and information so that their outreach is purposeful.
Yeah, so right. They have confused interest with commitment. So they've got sincere interest. They haven't got commitment. And this is the really interesting thing, because when we look at buying journeys, and we spend a lot of time mapping buying journeys, the work for the buyer is really between when they've got sincere interest and getting commitment across the organization. That's when the value analysis committee comes in. That's when everybody jumps in. That's where the real work occurs. And to your point, Justin, that's how we should stay engaged with our buyer. We shouldn't be sending them more information about how great our product is. We should be working with them through their buying journey, through that buying journey of having to get everybody on sign. So how do we align infection control? How do we work with IT? That's where the salesperson can add real value. And oddly enough, it's kind of counterintuitive in many ways, because we keep falling back to assertive persuasion. But oddly enough, we have probably worked with multiple other hospitals that have gone through that same process, that same buying journey. We know what's going to happen. We know infection control is going to get involved. We know the value analysis committee is going to get involved. We know IT is going to get involved. We know what the issues are. It's hard sometimes to put the issues on the table because we hope that they won't come up. We're betting. Right. This one, we've got this physician. He's a champion. He's going to run this through. It won't need to go to the value analysis committee, right? We are betting on a total outsider. So the counterintuitive thing to do is to actually discuss all those issues with the hospital. Say, well, if this is something you want to do, these are the things you're going to have to handle. You're going to have to handle the change management. You're going to have to handle infection control. You're going to have to handle these issues with IT. But there it is. We're experts. We will walk beside you and help you right the way through that buying journey. So that's how you stay engaged in the buying journey. That's how you're relevant, and that's how you add value and not waste your prospects' time.
That's a really great point. I think everybody working on the healthcare supply chain side is going to appreciate what you just said there, and hope more people pick up on it. Instead of hoping it won't come up, hit it head on and lay out that you've got a plan for walking them through that. And because that will come back to the bandwidth concerns. How much time and energy am I going to have to put in to dealing with all these unforeseen potential circumstances, that I know from doing many conversions or doing product implementations, post signing a contract, they always come up. So don't tell me they're not going to come up. Tell me how we're going to deal with them, and how easy is it going to be for me to navigate that based on the level of support I'm going to get from you if I buy from you. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
That's the goal.
In the last thing about just bandwidth, it reminded me, I had a conversation with a senior supply chain exec probably about 6 months ago. And I said, on a given day, how many emails do you get? And he goes, it fluctuates. He goes between 500 to 600 a day. And he goes, and about half of that is external. And so that's that sales rep who keeps on hammering, hey, can I have a meeting? Hey, are you ready? So you can only imagine if that happened every single day, it's difficult. And, I just think, I think that's one thing we don't realize, and we don't put enough stake in, that the providers are trying their best, but they only have so many hours in the day, so many resources to get these things done.
And it's getting worse thanks to artificial intelligence. Because now in our marketing and selling, we can spew out that stuff, and it's getting better and better all the time. So we're now typically you can see if something's just come from an AI engine today, but I predict in the next 6 months that won't be the case. So we can now churn out that crap that's customized to that particular hospital. So it'll talk to them and their situation. So it will look as if it's really relevant. So that's what we're fighting against. We're just getting overwhelmed with that stuff. So how do you?
I almost think that overutilization on AI is going to saturate to a point where it's actually going to flip the script, and it's going to make the in-person connections that much more important again. And if AI can create things that can get through that sort of like human ability to detect, AI can create the thing that says this is an AI message. Like it can spot its own AI as well. So, it's just going to be an AI war. Who has the most advanced AI? But I honestly firmly believe in terms of selling and sales process, not necessarily marketing. I think there are lots of positive applications for AI, but I think selling is going to become much more, in person again as a result of just that flood of information.
I totally agree with you, but the intelligent salesperson should be using AI to do all their research, to do all that they need to do so they can have an informed conversation. So I see there's a huge use for AI, but it isn't to generate stuff. It's to really use to help us
augment your intelligence.
Oh, through tons of research in minutes. Absolutely. That's when it gets exciting. So
it shouldn't be artificial. It should be augmented. Yeah. Martyn, great interview once again. Nice job today. I know this is going to resonate, no matter what side of the table, as people love to say these days, that you sit on, moving from assertive persuasion towards collaboration, finding more effective ways, to do transformational change in our organizations. I think it's going to be critical. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Martyn Lewis, everyone, founder and principal at Market Partners, coming back to talk to us maybe a little bit less about why buyers don't buy necessarily, but more about how can we collaborate better together. And I really loved Martyn's point, Hayes, about, just the fact that there are so many other factors. Like you can have all the great, data, you can have all the great white papers, all the convincing argument, all the passion in the world, but there's just so much more to the story about really, truly understanding what's going on in that healthcare organization, how you align with the priorities, and how you remove the barriers to adoption in a very different way. So great conversation with Martyn.
Martyn's an absolute, just a guru. I mean, because of all of his research he's done with all these different suppliers inside of providers, it's really fascinating how they map the journey. And I learned a lot as well. Great guy. Wonderful listen too, by the way, with a great accent. So I enjoyed him.
That's going to do it for this episode. Great job, Martyn. And on behalf of Hayes and myself, thanks for listening to this episode of Power Supply.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Power Supply. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on your iPhone or Android. Simply search for Power Supply in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@powersupplymedia.net. We look forward to hearing from you.